All right, so we're learning chapter 9. We had started it last week with number 1, and we are now learning number 2. Beis, vafilu b'shtika so lahafsik yosem k'dei she'ila shalom talmud l'rav. Shehin shalosh tovus elu shalom alecha rabbi. Even with silence, it is forbidden to interrupt more than the amount of time it says to greet your teacher, which are the 3 words shalom alecha rabbi, in terms of an interruption. And that amount of time, by the way, shalom alecha rabbi, which is 2 seconds or so, is of course a very important shir in halacha in many concepts. You can change a bracha, you can change your mind about buying something, selling something, transactions. That's the standard amount of time to change your mind about anything. So here, you're not changing your mind, you said a bracha and you're not eating right away. You're waiting for some reason. So if you waited that amount of time, it's considered a hefsek lechatchila in the first place. What I mean in the first place, because he says, if you ended up waiting more time than that, you do not have to make another bracha. Now, waiting for the purpose of eating is not considered a hefsek at all. So, of course, in the first place, you should not even make that hefsek. So let's say you're eating hot soup, and the soup is too hot to eat. Of course, if you already made a bracha, you must wait until it cools off, or blow it, or whatever, to be able to eat it. However, in the first place, you should, of course, wait till it cools off before you make the bracha, or blow it before you make the bracha, or whatever it is, because you want to minimize interruptions, even for the sake of eating, if at all possible. Therefore, you make a bracha on a fruit, and you cut part of it off, and you eat it. You should not cut it until after the bracha. In order that you should be able to make a bracha on a complete item, which is the best mitzvah, like we're going to see in chapter 10. We know that in the first place, you are supposed to make a bracha on a complete item, a shalem. Now on Shabbos, everybody knows you don't cut the lechem mishnah at all until you make the bracha. You just make a little mark. But even during the week, if you're eating a whole loaf of bread, you're not supposed to cut it all the way through before the bracha. Cut it partially, but not all the way through, because you want to make a bracha on a complete item. And that's not just true about bread, it's true about fruit, it's true about anything. So therefore, you don't want to cut up the fruit before you make the bracha. You want to cut it after you make the bracha. So you take, let's say, an apple, you say the bracha, and then you cut it, unless you're just going to bite into it, it's no problem. But if you're going to cut it, you say the bracha first, and then you cut it. That cutting may take more than 3 seconds to get that first piece ready, but it's okay, because it's for the sake of eating. And that's the type of thing you're not supposed to do in advance, because like we said, it's better to make a bracha on a complete thing.
But if you only wanted, if you only wanted to eat half of the apple from the beginning, you're not going to eat, it's your portion, you're going to die, whatever. So I think you should cut it half and say the bracha and eat whatever the bracha on what you're going to eat.
No.
No?
Why should you make a bracha on a half if you can make a bracha on a whole?
Let's say you're splitting that apple with another person.
Yep.
So each one is going to eat half an apple.
Yep.
And maybe not necessarily at the same minute.
Okay.
So
whoever eats first should make a bracha on the whole apple.
And the other person doesn't say bracha.
No, he said the bracha on his half. Why not?
So half an apple is going to get 2 brachos.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can divide an apple into 100 pieces. You can get 100 brachos. Not a question of how many brachos you say in an apple. It's a question of how many people are eating. Each person who eats says a bracha. Bread is an exception. If people eat bread together, one person says the bracha and everybody is yotza. Wine also, because that's something you eat as a group or you drink as a group. But other foods, most other foods, each person makes their own bracha. Okay. One should not worry about the interruption of the amount of time it takes to cut between the bracha and the eating. Nevertheless, a person who eats a nut or anything similar should break it before he makes a bracha. Because maybe it will have rotted or gotten wormy inside. It's a bracha will be a bracha l'vatala. Now, when it comes to a nut that you can open without breaking, like a pistachio nut, for sure you should make you should open it first because it'll still be complete after you open it. But then there are nuts that once you crack them, they're smashed and they're not whole anymore, like a walnut. If you crack the shell, it's probably gonna break a little bit, so it's not going to be complete. So you might think that you should first say the bracha and then crack it open. The issue is that if there's a good likelihood that it's going to be rotten, I don't know about good, if there's a significant likelihood it's going to be rotten or wormy, then you should rather break it open first and not risk saying a bracha l'vatala. Okay, now by the way, since we're talking about not interrupting between a bracha and eating, in the handout that I just sent out now right before the shir, I pointed out that you should also not make other, number 11, you should also not make other interruptions, like you shouldn't sing after you make a bracha before you eat, shouldn't wink, shouldn't do anything. You should eat right away. Now, b'diavad, none of these things are a hefsek, except for talking. If you spoke about anything that is not relevant to the eating before you ate, after you made the bracha, then the bracha becomes l'vatala. Or if you walked and changed locations or whatever. But otherwise, it's not lachatchila, but b'diavad, it's going to be okay. Another point is that when you're making a bracha on bread and you're breaking it, you're cutting it to pieces and sending it to different people to eat, you should take a bite before you cut for everybody else. Because you're cutting for them is not necessary for you and your bracha. So therefore, it shouldn't be done. It's like a hefsek. Yeah, but if you did it, it's still going to be okay. But in the first place, you should cut it and eat it before you pass it on to them. Now, this is for sure true, my friends, if they are making their own bracha. Chabad, everybody makes their own bracha when they say hamoitzi. One person says hamoitzi, cuts it up, everybody gets a piece, they say their own bracha. So for sure you should cut before you cut it up for them, because they're making their own bracha anyway. So why should you interrupt between your bracha and your eating for them to get their bread when they anyway are making their own bracha? Now, if you're doing like most Jews do, which is that you're making a bracha and they're all being yotze from you, which even Chabad holds that you could do it, but we just prefer to make our own bracha in case it's an interruption or whatever. But let's say you're doing that, so then you could say, well, it's not really an interruption because my bracha is the same bracha for everybody. So why is my eating more important than their eating? Right? It's one bracha that's good for 10 people. Why should I be the one to eat first of those 10 and interrupt my time between the bracha and the eating? Why don't I cut it up first and let the other 9 people have less of an interruption between the bracha and their eating? Because it's the same bracha that's going for them. So why not? The answer to that question is as follows. Listen carefully. When a person makes a bracha and he's moitzi others, they have to wait for him to eat before they can eat. That's halacha. Since he's the one making the bracha, his bracha should take effect before they use it, so to speak. So all the people have to wait anyway to eat before they eat. So therefore, you come first. You understand? So there's no point in giving them first because they're anyway going to have to wait for you. So it's nothing to be gained for them and everything to be lost for you in terms of not having an interruption. So that is the halacha. The only exception, my friends, is something new that I learned today, which is quoted in the Sefer called Birchos in the name of the Arizal. Friday night, you can cut for your wife and give it to her first, even before yourself. This is a new minhag that I was not aware of. I'm aware of it in terms of before all the other guests that I saw quoted from the Baba Rebbe, the first Baba Rebbe, that he said a person should give, I don't know if he said a person, but he said to his son that he should give his wife before he gives to all the other guests, including himself, even though he was the father. So that's one thing. But here it says that you can give your wife even before yourself on Friday night. I'm not sure what the reason for that is, Al Pi Kabbalah or whatever. Okay, my friends, moving right along to Halacha Gimel.
So, Rabbi, the same applies for wine, yes.
In terms of drinking before everybody else, yes.
Okay.
You should drink before you give to everybody else because, A, if they're making their own bracha for sure. B, if they're being yotze from you, they also have to wait till you drink. So that's true.
But you have the issue about some people don't like to drink from a cup that somebody else drank or whatever.
Right. So pour some of it out to another cup. But don't pour individually to each person because that's too much of an interruption. And that's not a necessary interruption. Just pour whatever amount into another cup, drink, and then that cup can be distributed to the other people.
If you use one of these contraceptions that they have that you put the wine in the top and distributes the wine.
It's called a contraption. Contraption. just to get it right.
Okay.
Another word means something else entirely. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So, I mean, that would be like serving everybody else.
Yeah, that's true. But if you're doing that because they're not comfortable drinking after you drink, then that's fine. And that makes it fast. Sure. It's a very cute contraption. Okay. We continue and we say with Gimel. A person should be very careful when it comes to having kavanah by the brachos. You should understand the concept of the brachos, which are that he's blessing Hashem, and what he's blessing Hashem for. His heart should not be turning towards anything else. He shouldn't be thinking about anything else when he's saying the bracha. I must say I was very impressed by a fellow I met in one of my touring expeditions in Eretz Yisrael. I met a guy who said he's part of the Musar, I forget what he called it, the Musar group, I think it's called. So I said that I had come across the Musar group online before, but it didn't look like it was Orthodox. So he said, actually, it's like 40% Orthodox people, and the rest are Reform, conservative, non-affiliated, but they all learn traditional Musar, meaning to say the Musar Sfarim of, that are based on Chazal and whatever. So anyway, we were talking or whatever, but I was very impressed because when he went to the bathroom, and I just noticed he said Asher Yotzar, he stopped everything he was doing. He didn't walk, he didn't mumble, he said the bracha very, very properly. So it was interesting, not a Jew with a beard. I don't even know if he probably had a yarmulke on or a cap or whatever. But anyway, Lamaisa, you're supposed to have a proper kavanah when you say a bracha. And that's the main thing of a bracha or of a tefillah, is the kavanah. And tefillah or a bracha without kavanah, Chazal say, is like a body without a soul. Excuse me. to the extent that some say that you're actually not Yotza. There's an opinion that says that you're not Yotza or Bracha if you don't have Kavanah. According to the opinion that you're not Yotza, you have two problems. First of all, you're eating without a bracha now, because you're not going to make another bracha, as we'll see. And you're also over on taking Hashem's name in vain. Because if you're not used to the bracha, then why did you say Hashem's name? So it's a very serious thing. Now, Bidi Yeved, once the bracha is said, you don't repeat it. Because some say you're Yotze even without Kavanah. You said it in Hebrew. You understand the language, even though you weren't thinking about it, you're Yotze. So Bidi Yeved, you can't say it again. You're not allowed to say it again. Because it might be a bracha in vain to say it again. So in practice, you cannot say it again. So that's why it's so important to get it right the first time. And as I pointed out in note number 1, in the handout that you should have gotten at 8:08, the Reb Chaim Vital says that when you say a bracha properly on food, you basically remove the klipa, the unholy forces that are attached to that food, and then you're able to eat the food in a manner that does not disturb your spiritual level. Normally, when you eat food that has impurities attached to it, it brings you down spiritually. But if you say the bracha properly, so you remove those klippas, it does not bring you down. And Reb Chaim Vital says that enables a person to achieve Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration. So that's a good thing to know about. Daled. Anything you make a bracha on, whether to eat or to smell, or it lasts by mitzvah to do a mitzvah with it. So you have to hold it in your right hand when you make a bracha. The reason for holding it in your right hand when you make a bracha is to be able to have kavanah when you're saying it. If you're holding something in your hand, you have kavanah, it's easier to have kavanah. And the reason for the right hand is because the right hand is given more importance in Chazal. Like we see when you get dressed, and in so many other ways. A lefty, the pasha should hold it in his left hand. And by the way, like I pointed out in the notes, this is not just true about food that you're going to make a bracha on, but it's also true about a sefer. If somebody passes you a sefer, you should take it with your right hand. It's also true, about objects with which you're going to do a mitzvah. You're going to do a mitzvah of, eating matzah, shofar, lulavs, menorah, all these things, all the objects you're going to do a mitzvah with, you should hold in your right hand before you start. Unetila ayedei kli shma netila. Holding it by a kli is considered a proper way of holding it. Now, even though it says that it is a proper way of holding it, the other person can say it's considered a bizayon. It's considered not respectful to hold a food with something else when you're making the bracha. To be respectful, you should hold the food directly, not even with gloves. However, when the normal way to eat it is with a spoon or a fork, we'll discuss a fork more in a minute, if that's the normal way to eat it, if that's the normal way to eat it, then you could eat it. So soup or salad or rice or something that's not normal to eat in your hand, that's fine to hold it in a keli. And however, it is good to be careful not to hold it with a knife. You shouldn't hold it with a knife because a knife represents impurity, unholiness, the side of the sitra achra. And the right What you're holding it with represents the side of holiness. So why would you mix in the side of unholiness with the side of holiness? And therefore should not hold with your knife. Sorry,
I
what?
didn't understand that part. I'm so sorry, Rabbi. Can you repeat that again?
A knife represents Esav, represents death, killing, blood. That's why you're not allowed to use a metal on the Mizbeach, because the Mizbeach lengthens people's lives, and a knife shortens it, or metal in general shortens it. So that's why you're not supposed to hold a knife in your hand when you're making a bracha, because you're holding it in your right hand. The right hand represents Hashem's kindness and holiness, and you're holding a knife which represents negative energy. So that's a clash.
Applies also to a wooden knife or plastic knife.
That's a good question. I don't think it would apply. I don't think it would apply to those kinds of knives. I saw an interesting thing in the Kaf HaChaim. The Kaf HaChaim says that the same thing applies to a fork, that you shouldn't hold it with a fork. I guess because the fork also acts in a certain way like a knife, in that it pierces things, you stick it into things. He says if you need to use a fork, use a silver fork. I guess because silver isn't usually used for killing. I found that interesting. I don't have any silver forks in my house, I must admit. I have a silver spoon because Chabad minhag is that you walk over a silver spoon on the way into the Yichud room. And I asked my father if I could have that one. So I have it, but I don't have any silver forks. Anyway, Lamaisa, we continue and we say. If you did not hold the object at all. Oh, by the way, speaking of knives and the power of Esav and judgment and klipa and so on. So there's a halacha that you're not supposed to have uncovered knives on the table when you bench. You all familiar with that?
Yeah.
Very good. You're not supposed to have uncovered knives on the table when you bench because of this reason. There's another reason over there also. In any case.
There's some people that cover the bread when they bench. I don't know why.
Never heard of it.
No, I seen it.
I never heard of it. I am not saying it's wrong. I just never heard of it.
What's the ikar regarding covering the knives for benching? Why dafka?
Why dafka?
Why dafka you have to do because of benching? So to cover the knives that the knives on the table, for example, there's settings on the table, and they're saying the balabais is doing kiddush.
The balabais is doing kiddush.
And the table and the knives are so I'm saying what's the ikar?
It's mostly when you bench that the table is considered like a mizbeach. That's
when you bench.
When you bench, that's when you elevate it more so than the rest of the meal. Anyway, how could we say don't have knives on your table if you have to eat? You're not going to have knives. By the benching, when it's most like a mizbeach, that's when.
Mm.
Do you have to cover everybody's knife? It's not so clear. At least the knives that are in front of you. If there's other settings that have knives, I don't know if you have to go around the table and cover everybody else's knife. But yours or the ones that are near you, yes. David is asking about the Chabad minhag. The Chabad minhag is that when a chassan walks into the yichud room with his kala, they put down a silver spoon and they walk over that spoon. It's a symbol of something good. I'm not sure exactly what, wealth or silver is chesed. I don't know what exactly, but that's the minhag. Okay. If you did not hold the food at all, if the food was in front of you when you made the bracha, you just weren't holding it, you're yotza. If you made a bracha and only then they brought you the food. Even if you made a bracha with that in mind, you have to make another bracha. Okay, my friends, listen very carefully. When it comes to having a bracha take effect in the first place, it's much different than having a bracha that already took effect cover other foods. When you make a bracha on one food and you want it to cover other foods, it's much easier than when you make a bracha in the first place to cover the food that you make the bracha on. So for example, if I make a bracha and I know that there's more food coming out, I don't even know what it is. I don't know when it's coming out. I don't know who's bringing it out. I just have in mind, I'm making a bracha shahakal. Whatever my wife brings to the table is covered, whatever shahakal food. It's fine. You don't know what it is, where it is. You know it might be coming. You have it in mind. That's good enough. When it comes to saying a bracha on something, the item has to literally be either in your hand or at least in front of you. If it's not in front of you, if it's in the next room, even if you know for a fact that it's coming out, you cannot make a bracha even b'diavad. Even b'diavad, you're not yotze with that.
And I think we discussed at one point that you're visiting, then it would be different. Like,
no. If you're visiting, then when you make a bracha on something that's in front of you and you eat it, and then they bring something else from the kitchen, it's covered, even though you didn't have it in mind, because you're a visitor. Whatever they're going to bring to you is covered. But that's only once the bracha takes effect. But if you didn't say it on something that's in front of you at all, you just said a bracha stam, and then they bring you something from the kitchen, you can't grab it and have a drink.
I don't know. I'm saying the difference in regards to the kavana. You don't need to have kavana for whatever is coming later, or you do.
It's an assumed kavana. You don't have to have specific kavana. It's an assumed kavana if you're a guest that you're including whatever's coming later. Okay. But I'm not talking about whatever's coming later. I'm talking about what the bracha goes on in the first place.
Yeah, okay. That's the same.
When you make a bracha in the beginning, it has to go on something that's in front of you. There is a discussion in the Achronim, what if it's in a drawer? So it's literally in front of you, but it's not visible. Some say it's good enough because it's in front of you. Some say, no, it literally has to be visible. The Mishnah Berurah wants to say a chiddush, my friends. Mishnah Berurah wants to say a chiddush, that if the food is in the kitchen, but it's definitely coming out, because you were mamish there just a second ago and you know that it's there and you know that the guy is bringing it to you, the waiter or whatever, he wants to say that the kitchen is no different than a drawer. And just like some say that you're yotze if the food is in the drawer, the same thing you're yotze if the food is in the kitchen. That is a chiddush in Mishnah Berurah, which the Alter Rebbe does not say. Presumably he does not agree with it. And according to the Alter Rebbe, the food is not actually in front of you, you are not yotze.
We had a discussion about drinking water from a fountain.
Yes.
Yeah, that was something related.
Yeah, that's coming up. Coming up. Have no fear. Number 5. A person who made a bracha on the fruit that's in front of him. And then they brought him more of the same species. Or a different species that is covered by the same bracha. For example, they have the same bracha, or the first is the ikra and the second is the tafel, therefore it's covered, usually. You don't have to make another bracha. You brought the second min after you finished eating the first min. That you already ate it. That's only if you made a bracha in the first place. You got in mind to eat the second one. If you finish the first bracha, if you didn't have it in mind, specifically to cover it with this bracha. One more time. You're eating apples. And you made the bracha on apples. And there's no oranges in front of you. But you know there's oranges in the kitchen. And you expect to eat them. So, the halacha is that it's covered. Even though you didn't specifically think about the oranges when you made the bracha, but you knew that they're coming, so that's enough to cover them. This is a general thing, by the way, that whenever you make a bracha on one thing, and there's other things that can be covered by that same bracha, either because they are the exact same bracha or because they are tafel, they're going to be eaten as a tafel to the food you're eating. As long as you know it's coming, that's good enough. You don't have to specifically think about the oranges when you say boy prates. No, it's enough that you know it's coming, and that covers it. However, let's say he wasn't thinking about it at the time of the bracha. He didn't even know it was coming. And you're not a guest in somebody else's house, right? You're a guest in your own house. I mean, you're not a guest. You're in your own house. Okay, listen carefully. The Alter is going to give 3 categories. This is a halacha that is not very well known. So I'm glad you're here tonight. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6 of you. I'm glad that 6 of you are here tonight so that you'll learn this halacha. There are 3 categories as far as covering foods that you did not specifically know you were going to eat when you made the bracha. Number 1 is the exact same type. Number 2 is a similar type. And number 3 is a totally different type. Same type as apples. Different type is oranges. A similar type is oranges. And a completely different type is, what's a different type when it comes to ha'etz? I don't know, because ha'etz is not fruit. So that's not a good example. So let's talk about shakal. You're eating chicken. The same type is chicken. Similar type is meat. A totally different type is mushrooms or water. Anything else like that. Okay? Bezoinus, let's say. You're eating cookies, chocolate chip cookies. The same type is more chocolate chip cookies. A different type is a different type of cookie or cake. A totally different type is rice. Let's say you say bezoinus on rice. So to have rice is totally different. Now, what's the halachic difference between these 3 cases? Listen carefully. Here's what it is according to the first opinion in this halacha. I'm saying first because there is a second one coming up. Here is the first opinion. Sorry. When you're eating more of the same exact type, more apples, then even though you didn't think about them, you didn't expect to have them, it's still covered by the bracha. Because that's a normal thing. You know what I'm saying? Who eats just one potato chip? Who eats just one jelly bean? Just one French fry? I mean, you don't do it. It's normal that no matter what you specifically intended to eat, it's normal to eat more of the same type. That's all the same type. Listen carefully. Oh, sorry, and that's true even if you finished the original thing. You had, a pile of 5 jelly beans. You finished all 5. Now you decide you want to eat more, or somebody brought you more. You decide you want to eat more. But you didn't It's all covered because that's normal to go from first to more. When I say somebody brought you more, I don't mean he brought you from the store, because that's totally not expected. I mean from the kitchen or whatever. If it's not from the same species, but they're both types of fruit, or they are both types of drink. Listen carefully. If he still has from the first type, he doesn't have to make a bracha. If he's already finished, he has to make another bracha. Listen carefully to category number 2, my friends. You're eating apples, and then you decide you want to eat oranges, or somebody brings you oranges, and you did not have them in mind. So now it depends. If you finished eating the apples, done, even though you didn't make a bracha nefashos, you're done. So then you can't use that same bracha for oranges. If, however, you're still eating apples, so there it's not unusual to go from apples to oranges or to pears or to apricots or to cherries, plums, grapes, you name it. Actually, grapes is more complicated. We're going to see about that soon. But all those things, it's not unusual. As long as you're still eating what you started with, it's not unusual to go off into other things. And therefore, you don't make a bracha as long as you're still eating the first thing.
So it makes a difference if you said after blessing on the apple or
absolutely, not? Absolutely, 100%. Whenever you said an after blessing,
you start all over.
That's it. You must start all over, even for the apple. Even if you were planning to eat more apple, if you said after blessing, you have to make another bracha. Because an after blessing, by its very nature, is an interruption. After blessing says, thank you, Hashem, thank you very much, I'm done, thank you. Even if you're thinking, I'm not done, it doesn't make a difference. You're done. You said you're done. You said the bracha that you're done. You're done. You want to eat more? You have to make another bracha. Now, of course, in the first place, you shouldn't make that after bracha if you're planning to eat more. But if you did, for whatever reason, you absolutely have to make another bracha. Okay?
What if you said like alamija, but you didn't say borene fashos? Do you want to continue eating shackled food?
So I heard a shir from Abdach about that. It was a pretty detailed shir. And the bottom line is that you could argue one way, you could argue the other way. In practice, you don't have to make another bracha, but it's better not to do that. Meaning to say, if you're still eating your bar nefashos foods, better not to say an alamechia. Better to wait until you're finished what you're eating and then say alamechia and bar nefashos together. Because it is still a bit of a question. That since you're saying a bracha that is a finishing bracha, even though it's not the bracha to finish what you're eating, that it might be a finishing. Again, it's not the main halacha, but there is room to argue that. And that's why in the first place it's better to wait and say the also after you're finished eating the other foods. Okay, here we go now. אלא שנפטר בריכס הראשון במחמד שברכסן שווס ושחד ריקו בשני טוב. כאן שיש שייכו יין צרף. כך ודאג ומקביל עמד הקשתיה. אבל שגם ברכה אחס, אין פגם עד הגדג ונפעיל לשחר, שעדי כך שיש יויסר, והיה לפניו עדיין מן הראשון, אין נפטר בבריכס האחס. אלא כאן הצדעת עליהם, אוי שלפונים שעצה ברוך. Okay, listen carefully, my friends, to number 3. Number 3, you're not continuing to eat apples. You're not continuing to eat oranges, apples, apricots, plums, mangoes, lychees, blah, 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 anything like that. you're planning to eat something totally different. Actually, he doesn't give an example with apples because fruits are fruits, but he gives an example with shahakal. You said a bracha on liquids, and now you want to eat something else completely different than liquids. You want to eat fish, right? You want to have cheese. At this point, you cannot transfer the brachos. Even if you still have some of the first one left. Give me one moment, please. I need a little coffee break to wake up. Just give me a moment, please. All right, Rabbi Isai, thank you for your patience. And we continue and we say,
By the way, Chodesh Tov.
Thank you very much.
We started the class in Tammuz, so we're finishing in Av.
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Okay. So, here's the word. When it comes to the third category, which is foods that are not similar to the original food, even though they have the same bracha. So, for example, you said a bracha on mashke, right? Which is the bracha of shahakal. Right? And you now want to have fish, right? You want to have some herring to help you down the mashka. Herring is also shahakal. And you're having the herring in a secondary way to the mashka because it's helping you put out the fire in your mouth from the mashka, right? So you could argue and say, well, I shouldn't have to say shahakal. And I'm still having that mashka. I haven't finished yet. No, If you did not have it in mind when you said shahakal, it's not covered because it's too different. We can't say, yeah, it's normal to go from one to the other. When it comes to fruit, yeah, I mean, if it's the same species, yes, definitely normal to continue and have more of the same. A different species, if you're still having the first one, yeah, it's also normal. But a totally different species, it happens to be the same bracha, it's not, you can't say it's normal to go from one to the other. And
So,
therefore, it's not covered regardless.
So like saying whiskey or vodka.
Whiskey and vodka are both in the same category. But if you want to go from whiskey or vodka to chicken or to steak,
That's what you're saying. Okay.
or to
So in
fish,
other words, if it's the same thing, meaning it's the same liquid, or it has to be the same if it's alcohol.
well, the same. He started off and he said, if it's the same mamish, then you don't have to make another bracha even if you finish the first amount, right? And that would be vodka to vodka, whiskey to whiskey, cognac to cognac, brandy to brandy, blah 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 blah, etc. etc. And then the second type is if it's also a liquid, whether alcohol or any other liquid. But if it's also a liquid, so then as long as you're still drinking the first liquid, the bracha can be extended to another liquid. But if you finish drinking the first liquid, then you're drinking another one, you have to make another bracha. Again, this is if you didn't have it in mind, or didn't have a general thing in mind that you're going to drink whatever, eat whatever. And then it's from a liquid to a solid to something else completely different. It doesn't have to be a liquid and a solid, but I mean something else completely different. From mushrooms to steak, or vice versa. It's a totally different category. So there, if you didn't have it in mind, it doesn't cover it. It doesn't cover it. It's too different. There is no automatic coverage.
Now, what if you had a situation of Iker Vetoffel, like, I don't know, you're eating matzo ball soup, they take away the soup and then they bring matzo balls.
What's the question?
So,
What's the Iker?
The soup. I mean, I guess you have very little. So that's a totally different bracha. Okay.
So, Rebbe, I have a question. So, in other
I
words,
just want to point out there is no Iker on tafel by matzo ball soup.
No? Okay.
Because mazonis is never tafel. So you definitely have to make a bracha mazonis on the matzo balls. And because the matzo balls are not usually cooked in the soup, so the soup is not a mazonis soup, the soup is a shahakal soup. So unless you're only eating the soup to flavor the matzo balls, maybe you are. If you're eating the soup to flavor the matzo balls, then you're right, you'd only make a mazonis, even if they weren't cooked together. But if you're eating soup because you want to eat soup, and you're putting matzo balls in there because you want to eat matzo balls, there is no ikra, there is no tafel. You make one bracha, you make 7 brachas on each one.
So if you were like a chicken soup, then you have solid and liquid. And then you didn't plan to eat more chicken, but they bring chicken later. So it's covered by the chicken soup bracha.
That's an interesting question. Is chicken soup the same species as chicken because they're both made out of chicken? Or do we say that one is a liquid and one is a solid and therefore not the same? That's an interesting question.
But they're cooked differently. Would that be in a situation that because due to the fact that they're cooked differently, for example, you're having soup first with a chicken, then they come up with a broiled chicken or baked chicken. It's a whole different entity.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know the answer. I don't think the fact that they're cooked differently makes a difference. But I think the fact that one is a solid and one is a liquid does make a difference.
No, but the chicken itself is not a liquid if it's in the soup.
Yeah, but that's not the main thing. You make a bracha on the chicken soup. Main thing
because it's a tafel. Because the chicken in that situation is considered a tafel.
Well, it doesn't have to be a tafel because it's one bracha, so it doesn't make a difference. I'm saying the main thing is the soup.
So let me ask you a question, Kavod Rav. So, for example, regarding shahako, you're drinking a soda, right? So you
Yeah.
hakol in the soda, and you decide to add mashka to the Coca-Cola, to put rum in it. Do you have to say a shehakol separately on that liquor?
If you're still drinking the soda, you don't have to, no.
Exactly. Okay.
Because that's the same general species. Not the same exact, but it's the same general.
Okay. Thank you, Ray.
No problem. Now, there is a whole other opinion coming up. According to the other opinion, you would have to. But in practice, when in doubt, you leave the bracha out. So in practice, you would not make a bracha in that case. Okay. One more time, let's finish off number 3. So Al Bishakal Bracha Chasim, it's all the same bracha. And the fish should be secondary to the beer. That through the fish you're able to drink more. You still had some of the first stuff left. The term bracha chas not covered with them bracha. Unless you had your intentions to eat them. They were in front of you. Having it in front of you, by the way, my friends, this is very important. Having something on the table in front of you, it's the same as having in mind that you're going to eat it. Because it's on the table in front of you, presume that you're going to eat it. Right? Yes?
So, I mean, if you don't, is there an issue with that?
No, there's no issue with that.
Okay.
You don't have to eat it just because you were presumably going to eat it. My point is, if you decide to eat it, it's not considered like you just now decided. It's considered as if it's part of the original bracha because that's what you intended all along.
So it's the same concept regarding when it's Shabbosim and then the balabais is doing Kiddush, the food that it would be covered because he would probably have to have the food in mind, even though it's not on the table. Let's say like a filter fish is in the kitchen. Would he have to have it in mind, even though it's in a different room, it's not in front of him?
No, don't have to have it in mind. It's understood, self-understood. But even if that's because you're a guest and the balabais, whatever he's bringing is considered like you had it in mind. But here the chiddush is even if you're not a guest, you're in your own home, and if you're not being served by anybody, you're serving yourself. So whatever you didn't have in mind in the kitchen is not covered. But if it's on the table in front of you, when you made the bracha, then it's covered. Because presumably whatever's on the table is fair game.
Mm-hmm.
What if you have the kavana that you're not going to eat what's in front? Let's say you're in a diet. You say, you know what, I'm eating one chocolate chip cookie, but I'm not eating.
That's funny. That's funny. Go ahead.
It's a real scenario, no? It happens, no? I'm gonna eat just this, and I'm not gonna taste all the 20 cakes that are on the dessert table. No?
Yep.
So your kavana is nothing. I mean that you're not gonna eat anything else, and then you know what? Your willpower fails, and then you're gonna go and eat more cake.
Then you have to make a bracha, no question about it.
Okay.
If you specifically had in mind not to cover it, it's not covered.
No, not to cover, not to eat it. I guess.
Yeah, same thing. If you specifically had in mind not to eat it, it's not covered. Of course. So
it's all based out of the kavana that you have.
Yeah. Of course, it's better not to have that kavana because whatever. But if that's what you had in mind, and then you change your mind, you have to make another bracha. Because it's not covered, because you were not planning to eat it. Now, I did see an interesting point that he brings down in the Birchos and also in the V'zei Bracha. I put it into the notes that I gave out in number 14. The whole idea that stuff that's in front of you is covered is because normally what's on the table in front of you is covered. If it's a situation, because normally you're going to eat the stuff that's in front of you on the table. If it's a situation that's not like that, then it would not be covered. So for example, let's say there was stuff on the table, but it was left over there from a previous meal. right? That's not normally something you're gonna eat in this meal. You're probably gonna put it away and take out something new. So that's not gonna be included. The same thing for that matter if you're not eating at the table, right? You're eating a snack. There's a table set and it's for people that are about to start eating, and you're not eating. You happen to be in that house, but you're not eating at this table. You're going out, and you happen to be standing in the room, and you happen to take a snack for yourself, eights, and you eat it, and then you notice something on the table that's also eights. You can't eat it. That's not included because you are not going to be part of that table. The fact that it's in your range of vision, it's not like a miraculous thing. Oh, it's in my range of vision. It covers everything in my range of vision. That's not the pshat. The pshat is it's expected you're going to eat it, so it's covered. But that's only because it's expected you're going to eat it. If that's not the case, then not. Yeah, ba 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 ba. Yeah, ba 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 ba. Okay. Here we go with opinion number 2. Now that we all got opinion number 1 clear in our heads, I hope. Just to review, according to opinion number 1, if it's the same exact type of food, then you do not make another bracha no matter what. It's a different, slightly different type of food. You only make a new bracha if you finish the first type. And the completely different type of food, like herring, tamashka, you always make another bracha, unless you intended to eat it or drink it. Yeshem, some say, Shapi Shavilu Falam in a Rishon V'leachal Rishon Dain, Tzachlas Levorach, Im Lo Yesed Dai Te'elav. Here comes the second opinion. Second opinion says, in order to be covered, you have to have had in mind that you're going to eat the food. There's no monkey business, my friend. You have to have had it in mind. Anything you didn't have in mind, regardless if it's the same species or not, regardless of whether you finished first eating the first species or not, makes no difference. It's not included. So if you're eating an apple, and when you start eating the apple, you didn't think about eating a second apple. You didn't think not. You didn't think yes. You just didn't think. You want to eat a second apple? You have to make a ha'etz. How much more so if you want to eat an orange? Even if you're still eating the apple. How much more so if you want to eat something totally different? You must always make a second bracha. The Maisa was Savik Brachos Lach Alter. Says Savik Brachos Lach. Ulechatchila in the first place. Totally Zor, it's good to be careful. As Dr. Kol Mashe Aviu Lefanav. You should have in mind whatever they're going to bring you. If you have in mind whatever they're going to bring you, then you have no issues, no matter what they bring you. You understand? Yes?
But if it's in your own house,
Yeah.
and you don't know what they're going to bring you, you don't have it in front of you, how can that be included?
Very simple. Because I'm having it in mind. I don't know what they're going to bring me, but I know they're going to bring me stuff. And I'm having in mind whatever stuff they bring me.
So I sit on the table with a glass of water, I say she'akol, and I think whatever they bring me, bring it on. No, like
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Mamish, trust in Hashem and in your wife, Avdil, whatever it is. Whatever they bring me is good. That's correct. That's fine. If guests are invited to a Balabais' house, since their intention is to eat what the Balabais gives them who invited them, their intention includes anything that's brought to them. So if you're a guest, whatever is brought to you is included in your presumed kavanah. All right, I just want to go to the notes where I made a little chart towards the end. As you can see in column number 2, had in mind. If you had it in mind, it's always covered. Okay? Now, starting on the left in the line about same exact type of food. If it's the same exact type of food, always, in practice, there's never a new bracha. Now, the truth is that that's a machlekes, because some say if you didn't have it in mind, even if it's the same thing, you didn't need another bracha. But lemaisa, in practice, we say safek brachas lak in case of a doubt we're lenient. So there is no new bracha as long as it's the same type of food. If it's a similar type of food, like apples and oranges, then of course you had it in mind, it's no problem. If you're still eating the first thing, it's no problem. If you finished the first thing, you must make another bracha. Now, the right-hand column about was eating it the way of kriyas, I'll get to that in a minute. Different type of food, once again, had in mind no new bracha, but in every other case, you have to make another bracha. Like, mushrooms to steak and mashke to herring. You must have it in mind. If you didn't have it in mind, you're always going to have to make another bracha because it's a different category. Okay, now let me share with you what the Mishnah Berurah says. Mishnah Berurah says that this whole thing, that you have to have it in mind, and if you didn't, maybe you have to make another bracha, is only if you're not eating in a way of kvius. You're not eating in any kind of permanent way. You're just grabbing a snack. But if you're eating in a permanent way, then it includes everything in that general category. Meaning to say, you're sitting down to eat fruit. Why sitting down to eat fruit? Because it's Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat, you sit down, you eat fruit. It's a serious business. So in that case, he says, you're for sure covered for any type of fruit. Whether it's the same type, different type, you had it in mind, you didn't have it in mind. You finished the first scoop, you didn't finish the first scoop, it doesn't make a difference. It's all considered like you had it in mind, because that's a normal thing when you're eating in a permanent way, in a kvius way. However, even that, as I said, only helps you for food in the same category, not in a different category. So even if you're sitting and drinking it after bringing it, so you're having plenty of mashka, if you want to have herring and it wasn't on the table and you didn't have it in mind, you're going to have to make another bracha. Fine. All right. Vav, yeah? Anybody? Y'all ready for Vav? Anybody?
Yeah, I'm just trying to absorb this the way of views.
Please absorb.
Are we starting Vav now?
We are.
So when it's not in a way of views, like for example,
Like a snack. Like a snack. You're looking for a snack. You take an apple. Kriyas is you sit down and you're eating. You're eating with a few friends. You're getting together. You're having a verbringen. Even if it's not bread, but you're sitting down and you're eating. In a settled manner. By
the way, Rabbi, what's the issue? But are we allowed to say amen on a bracha over the chat?
Yeah, there's different opinions about it, but in practice, yeah.
And it counts?
Does it count towards what, 90 amens?
Yeah, I guess.
I think so. Because it's simultaneous. It's like the Shul in Alexandria, where they lifted up the Amen flag and everybody said Amen, and they didn't hear it. All right, my friends, here comes Vav. You are about to learn something new that I don't think you ever learned in your life. Maybe you did and I'm mistaken, but most people have not learned it. חוזק שהראשון והשני הם שווים לחשיבות שאין לשני דין קדימה לראשון היו שניהם לפניו. אמה יש לשני דין קדימה לראשון. אף בישו יש שניהם לפניו בשעס הברכה. אין בירכה שאין מוקתם כתס המוקתם לברכה. אלא כן הסכם לפייטו בפייש ברכה זו. אפילו מיושם לפייטו אפילו לא היה לפניו בשעס הברכה. Okay, here. Here. We have not yet learned Parak 10. But when we learn Parak 10, we are going to see there are many laws about what comes first in terms of Brachos. There's an order for Brachos. You can't just eat whatever you feel like eating first. You have to say the bracha on the appropriate thing first. So there's a few factors that we're going to learn about. First of all, is it one of the species of Eretz Yisrael? And what number of species is it? Second of all, is it something you like? You don't like.
So what do you mean, what number of the species?
There's a list of species in the Torah. There's an order. They're listed in order. Oh. So the order we follow for the brachos.
Okay.
We're going to see about that. There's also the fact that you're supposed to make a bracha on something whole as opposed to something broken, like we mentioned earlier. Okay, so you're supposed to make a bracha on let's say, grapes, on olives before grapes. Olives come before grapes. Okay? That's halacha. We're going to see about it later, even though the pasuk, it appears later, but it's closer to the word eretz, the land. You're supposed to eat olive before grapes. You made a mistake, and you ate grapes before the olives. Here's the halacha, my friends. Listen carefully. Even though they are both fruits, and they're both eights, and they were both in front of you, and you're planning to eat them both, now that you want to eat the olives, you have to make another bracha.
Repeat that again. I didn't understand that.
If you don't follow the order that you're supposed to say the brachas in, you say the bracha on the wrong thing. You're supposed to say the bracha first on olives before that of grapes. You made a mistake. You made it on the grapes before the olives. According to the first opinion, which the Alter Rebbe quotes here, he's going to quote a second opinion in Zion. But according to the first opinion, which Alter Rebbe quotes here, you are actually not yotza. You're not moitzi the olives. You have to make another bracha on the olives. You mamish have them right in front of you. The grapes are here. The olives are here. You have them. You're planning to eat them both. You said you had the grapes. Now you want to have the olives. Why not? I mean, so eight. You had it in mind. It's in front of you. Ala milas. All the advantages. No, my friends. Here's the rule. Listen carefully. When something is more important than something else, it's not going to automatically be covered by the bracha of something less important. Important foods deserve their own brachas.
Olives are more important than grapes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the kavanah doesn't matter in this case.
Well, the kavanah only matters if you specifically had in mind that the bracha is going on them. That's the very last line of Vav. If one has the intention to exempt it, it is exempted even though it was not in front of one at the time of the bracha. Meaning to say, it doesn't automatically cover it, even if it's in front of you, even if you're planning to eat it. But if you specifically think that this bracha is going on that food, not just that you're planning to eat the food, but that the bracha is going on the food, then it will cover it. Here's the logic, my friends. Listen to the logic. a more important item is not automatically going to be covered by the bracha on a less important item, because it's not respectful to take the bracha from a less important item and kind of just drag in the more important item. But if you did drag it in, if you had in mind this bracha is going on that, okay, then it works.
You say you have in mind that it covers the other, but you ate the grapes first.
Exactly. But when I said the bracha on the grapes, I thought bracha Tashem B'Priya eitz. This bracha eitz is going on both of these things. You know what I'm saying? Not just that I'm going to eat both of those things. Normally that's enough. No. The bracha is going on both of those things. I want the bracha to cover both. Only then does it cover both.
It makes sense to eat olives before the grapes, because in a regular meal, I mean, the grapes, I don't know, could be the dessert, but the dessert would require a separate bracha anyways.
And it has nothing to do with the taste. It's simply because of the list in the Chumash. For example, dates also come before grapes. They're both sweet. It's just because in the list the dates are closer to the word Eretz, the land of Israel. They're only the second from that word, and grapes are third from that word. So it's just a technical thing. The Torah says so. That's all.
Yeah, but a typical meal, you will have grapes and olives on little plates on the table, whatever. So you first always gonna eat the olives first before the
Yeah,
grapes.
but I'm saying you're talking practical. I'm not talking practical. I'm talking Torah. So let's say it has nothing to do with sweet and savory. If you have dates and grapes, the Torah says you make the bracha on dates first before grapes. And if you made the bracha on grapes first instead of dates, the same issue applies. It's not going to cover the dates automatically unless you specifically thought, I want the bracha to go on it. What you're saying about olives and grapes could be true, but that's not what it's about. It's about simply the order that the Torah says. That's my point. All right, Rabbi Isai. Let's continue with Zion. I don't want to stress this point too much because Alter is going to bring another opinion that doesn't agree with this whole concept. But we should learn this opinion anyway, because A, in the first place, you should try to be strict and follow both opinions, and B, the Mishnah Brura and the Yalkut Yosef both paskin like this first opinion. So if you're not Chabad, this is what you should be following. That if a bracha is made on something less important, it does not automatically cover the more important thing, and it only covers it if you specifically intended for it to cover it. Lefikach, here are some examples, my friends. Listen carefully. Mi shayu lefonav, ma'aseh k'der shel chamesh min hadavar. A person who had in front of him cooked food of one of the 5 species of grains. One second, somebody's at the door. Give me a moment, please. All right, I thought someone was at the door. Okay, so you have porridge made of one of the 5 grains, oatmeal, right? And you also have cake. What's more important? Cake or porridge? Anybody?
The porridge is mesoros?
Yeah, it's made with grain. Let's even say it's made with wheat. Semolina. It's made with wheat.
It would be probably a cake, no?
Exactly. Why?
It's more processed, more refined.
It's more. I mean, there's more chashivas into it
Why?
because it's for desserts, for the special occasion. It's more
Nah.
elaborate in making it.
No.
No.
Alter Rebbe explains. The cake, if you eat enough of it, it becomes hamoitzi.
Ah, I forgot about that. You're right. Yeah, if you eat enough cake, it will be considered a chametzi.
Even though you're not eating that much cake, but the fact that it could be considered hamoitzi gives it a special status.
Exactly.
It's called lechem she'ena gomer. It's incomplete bread, which is much better than ma'aseh kedeir, which is the porridge, which can never be hamoitzi. Uberach al ma'aseh kedeir. Now, instead of making the mezainis on the cake, which you should have because it's a more important food, instead you made the bracha on the porridge. It does not automatically cover the cake because it's a more important food. It doesn't get covered automatically. Unless you specifically had in mind, when you said the bracha, I want this bracha to go on the cake. Now the Alter Rebbe explains this whole halacha. It's not logical. It doesn't make sense that something less important should cover something more important without intent. If you intended, okay, you intended, even though it's more important, you have it in mind. It has to be covered, so to speak. But if you didn't have intention, it's not right, it's not logical, and something more important should just kind of automatically be covered by something less important. Another example. Sha'achad kviya suda me'elas ba, v'asheni kviya suda me'elas ba. There's one perik base. Excuse me. Oi pas abba b'kisnem. She'kviya suda me'elas ba, imperial lechem d'bakam shalom teres lechem eshnes bashli. Okay, let's say you have two types of cake. One is a mezainis, which could be hamoitzi, and one is mezainis, which is mezainis forever. The example he gives here in Rabbi Green's Sefer is a normal cake is mezainis, which could be hamoitzi. But if the cake is fried in a pan, it's not really a cake, it's fried in a pan, it's like a waffle, so that's not going to be hamoitzi no matter how much you eat. So that's a lesser category. Similarly, if you have cake, which is mezainis, but again, that could become a moitzi. Or you have pirurei lechem medubakim. You have breadcrumbs that lost their tzur sapas. They no longer look like bread. They disintegrated. And then you stuck them together and you made them into some kind of new dish. But the fact is they don't have the appearance of bread. They are mezainis gomer. There's no way for them to be hamoitzi.
Rabbi, question: in lechem medubakim, could croutons be considered lechem medubakim?
No. Croutons are just lechem.
Lechem, okay. But they're crumbs. They're like.
I understand, but they didn't disintegrate. He's talking about when it disintegrates and it loses its form. Here, lechem medubakim is like matzah balls. Matzah balls are made out of matzah meal, which is basically crumbs of matzah flour. Crumbs are each hamoitzi separately. When you make it into the matzah ball mix and you bake it, it loses its form completely. And it becomes mezainis. And they're mezainis no matter how much you eat. You can eat 20 matzah balls and you don't wash. So therefore, cake is more important than matzah balls, because cake could be hamoitzi if you eat enough of it. Matzah balls cannot. And all of these halachas apply. That if you make the bracha on the less important one, the more important one is not going to be covered automatically, unless you specifically had it in mind. Okay, now before I continue and read out the Rebbe's next opinion, I want you to just know that this is the psak of the Mishnah Berurah and the Yaakov Yosef. So it's a very important opinion to know, even though the Alter Rebbe himself is not going to paskin like it. But it's important for people to know, especially if they're not following Chabad specifically, that for non-Chabad, the halacha is like we just said. Something less important is not automatically covered by something more important is not automatically covered by something less important, unless you specifically had it in mind. Yesh cholkim al kol zeh, my friends. Some disagree with this whole concept. What do you mean when they say? There's no difference if it's important or not. As long as it's the same bracha, even if one is something that you should make the bracha on before the other, if they're both in front of you, the one that is more important and should have come first is still covered by the bracha of the one that's not important. After this conversation, even though you did not have in mind specifically to cover it. In order to get out of a doubt in brachos, you should specifically think, I am covering everything, even more important things. Now, if the more important thing is in front of you, you simply make the bracha on that thing, no question about it. Then you go out of any problems. But if it's not in front of you, so it's going to be a machlokes if it's covered automatically or not. So in order to get it on machlokes, you should simply have in mind I'm covering everything, even what's more important, specifically with this bracha. See if there's any notes that I wanted to share with you. No, that's pretty much it. Okay, my friends.
I'm so sorry about it. What is the amount of, let's say, for example, what is the amount of cake can one eat so it be considered chametzi?
Oh, this you're supposed to know. Who can help Moshe out? Anybody? Come on, guys.
Six eggs.
4.
6 eggs.
4.
4 eggs.
So for kabetzim, the amount.
You're on the right track. If you're going to be full, 4 eggs is enough. If you're not going to be full, 6 eggs is questionable, and you should wash another bread first.
So what if you had already an existing meal already, and you're just finishing it off by just eating cake, a lot of cake?
What's the question?
Meaning you're full, you're already a little bit mid full, and now you're just eating cake as a snack. And I just received a text right now. That's why.
If you're going to eat less than 4 eggs worth, it's not an issue.
Less than 4 eggs worth.
Yeah, it's not an issue.
Thank you, Rebbe.
If you can eat 4 eggs worth or more, then it's questionable. Because I don't know if you can wash on that alone, because satisfaction is coming together with the other foods. But it's definitely questionable.
Okay. Thank you, Rebbe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ches. Notal biyodoi pri loichli ubeachalav. You took a fruit in your hand to eat, and you made a bracha on it. It fell from your hand, it got lost, or it became disgusting. It fell into the dirt. Disgusting. Can't fix it. To the extent that it's not fit for eating. Excuse me, now the Mishnah Berurah does point out that if you could salvage some of it, you should, and that way eat a little bit and not waste the bracha. But if it's too dirty, nothing to do. Yesh min zelefan avoid. There is some more of the same species with you. If you made a bracha on the cup of liquids and it spilled out, and you fill it again in the pitcher that's prepared for drinking, and it's all has no to say another bracha. Which that's only if you were planning to eat or drink. Even if it wouldn't have fallen. But stam, the bracha only takes effect when something was in your hands at the time of the bracha. Okay, my friends, listen carefully. Made a bracha, and the bracha cannot be used for the thing you wanted it to go for. But you have something in front of you that has the same bracha.
I mean, it wouldn't be. I mean, does it still fall into the category of like not having the kavanah for that item? I mean, you were not thinking of that item itself. That's according to one of the.
So here's the halacha. If you were thinking that you're going to eat it, even though you didn't think that the bracha is covering, but you thought you're going to eat it, then the bracha can be transferred. It's the same bracha. What's the question? I got distracted. What's the question?
No, there's no question. I was just trying to answer the.
Okay, listen carefully. We said before that when you make a bracha on something, and the bracha takes effect, it's much easier for the bracha to then be applied to other things. But when you make a bracha in the first place, in order for it to take effect on something, it's different. So that's why if it's in a different room, it doesn't work and whatever. Here is a chiddush. The thing that's in front of you that you made the bracha on is no good. It's no good for eating. So the bracha can include other things that are in front of you, as long as you specifically had in mind to eat them. It doesn't mean that you had in mind that when you said the bracha, they're covered. That's not what you had in mind. You had in mind you're going to eat them.
To be the same kind, the exact same type of food, not necessary. Or similar, can be similar.
No, it doesn't have to be.
So you can, let's say you had a cup of water and you say bracha shakol, and then you spill the water, and then you have fish that will recover.
If it was in front of you and you were planning to eat it, that's correct. Now, the truth is there are three opinions about this matter, as you'll find in the notes number 13. Three opinions about a bracha transferring to something else that was in front of you. The Machaber, the way it's understood by the Bir Halacha, says the bracha cannot be transferred. According to the Machaber, if the thing fell and it got ruined, there's nothing to do. Say Baruch Shem Kol Malchus Leilam Voed. Find yourself another piece, make another bracha. The Ramah is the one who says this compromise that the Alter Passes like. Akud Yosef also. That as long as you had in mind to eat that other fruit or anything, the bracha can go on it, even though it was supposed to go on something, but it was in front of you, you had in mind, you want that thing too. And then some Rishonim say that as long as the foods were in front of you, even if you didn't specifically have in mind to eat them, it's also good enough. And the Mishnah Berurah says to follow that opinion because of the doubt. Number 9. Afilu moisadaita bebeir lechal v'lishasai. Einer bracha chalak shulufana b'shas bracha. Amachar kachavi lufana tzarich lachas levarach amdafim mashbera mimenu afilu b'makom shlei yitzarich levarach imayarach v'shayis mashim yadoi. This that the bracha can be transferred to something has to be something that was in front of you, but not if it wasn't. Even if you wouldn't have to make a bracha on it had you eaten the first thing. But if here you didn't eat the first thing, and this is not in front of you, so it can't automatically be going on that. When we call Makam, this answer to your question, Emmanuel. A person who's sitting by a water fountain, standing by not water fountain, a person standing by a water spring of water, Brachos can make a bracha and drink. Even though the water that he made the bracha on has already gone. When he said the bracha, he knew the water was going to be gone. So therefore, it's not like he's changing his bracha. His bracha in the first place is going on that water downstream, upstream, whatever it is. Alter Rebbe adds another point in the Shulchan Aruch, by the way, about the river, and he says that the bracha covers all the water in the river because the river is really one big entity. So it is kind of like it was in front of you, because it's all connected. Okay?
But I thought I asked a while back, there were, and I think about this, about drinking fountains, and you said that there was a story from David HaMelech. It was the reason why we don't do this, or at least some people have a minhag
right.
not to do it.
It's better if you have it in a cup. A, you don't have to bend down. B, it's better to sit when you make a bracha and eat. And C, because here it's a leniency to consider that all the water is connected and whatever. But if you mamish have it in front of you, it's even better.
So, Rabbi, just to clarify, this thing about transferring the bracha to something else, when it will only apply on the same bracha.
Absolutely.
But what if you're saying a mochi, and then your bread gets ruined, you don't have more bread, but that bracha was supposed to cover the whole meal?
No go, my friends, no go. A moitzi only covers the meal if it goes on bread. If it doesn't go on bread, then it doesn't cover it. If you say a moitzi on meat, you have to repeat the bracha.
I understand. So the bread got ruined, so it doesn't transfer to anything?
Nope.
You start over from the next item. Okay.
Well, if you have more bread, if it's in front of you, you can just eat it without a bracha because it's included if you're planning to eat it. If it's not in front of you, you have to make another bracha. Or if you didn't specifically have in mind to eat it, even if it's in front of you, you have to make another bracha. But if you don't have any more bread, then you have to go ahead and make separate brachas and everything, yeah.
It's almost like, is there any sort of concept of tamura in what we're talking about?
Any concept of what?
Tamura, like in Daf Yomi.
It's interesting. It's a little bit similar because when you want the bracha to transfer to something else, it has to mamish be similar to the thing that it's going on. Insofar, it has to be there, and you have to be planning to eat it. So yeah, a little bit of a similarity. All right. Anytime you have to make another bracha, the first bracha is the bracha vatala. You have to say Baruch Shem. because when a person says a bracha l'vatala, so the name has been desecrated. So we kind of try to fix it a little bit by blessing Hashem, saying Baruch Hashem. Whenever a person says Hashem Shemanu Vatal by mistake, when on purpose, whatever he should say that. Let's say it fell before he said Elokeinu. You finish and you say a pasuk in Tehillim. Pasuk should be like you're saying a pasuk. Then let us know like you're saying Hashem's name in vain. Same thing, any bracha vatala that you remembered before you said Elokeinu. Once you said Elokeinu, you can't say because that's not the right words of the pasuk. But if you catch on before, you could just say that, and that's okay. Yeah?
So you say Lamdeni Hukaha?
I'm sorry?
The pasuk itself is Lamdeni Hukaha.
Yeah. If you said Baruch Ata Hashem, you can finish Lamdeni Hukaha.
That's if you do. Yeah.
Now there is a pasuk that says Lekei also. Baruch Hashem Lekei Somen Elam Elam Amakol Amen Hallelujah. We say it in davening. So if you say Lekei, you didn't say Nu, you could say that bracha as well. I'll think doesn't make it down, but the later Achronim do.
But if you finish the bracha and then you don't use it, then you say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut.
What do you mean you don't use it?
And you, let's say, use like in the case of the bread. I mean, you don't have more bread. You already say Amoti, and then you have to switch to something else. So
Another bread?
let's say
Another bread?
you say Amoti, like the example we said before.
Yeah.
And your brain gets ruined. You don't have more bread. So,
Okay. So you say Baruch Shem?
yeah, Baruch Shem.
Correct. Okay, let's stop here because Yud Aleph starts a whole new sugya, which is about Shinui Mokum. If you change your place in the middle of a meal, whether a short or long bracha achroina, what to do. Til Chaf. Yud Aleph Til Chaf, 10 halachas. I hope to be able to cover them next Monday night with Hashem. I wish you all a good Shabbos and a good Chodesh.
Shabbos, good Chodesh.
Thank you.
Good Shabbos.